What's up, everyone? Welcome back to, I don't even know what we call this series anymore. We do two a month. The first one of the month on Thursday has Dave Gerhardt. The second one I do on my own. And honestly, the way that I've been coming into these recently and intend to do today is, can we get the Slack shut off? I just heard that. What I intend to do today is share my unfiltered thoughts. So I have like a couple of notes in here, but I'm pretty much just going to start talking and let it come out, because what I've noticed, and the talk's going to be about strategy specific. I mean, we'll talk broadly on strategy, but specifically go-to-market strategy. And it came through just this actual weekend. Someone was interviewing me, and it clicked for me that like some people have this talent of being like super artistic or super empathetic or very athletic or very inspiring or very like mathematical. And I realized that the superpower for me is being able to develop strategy by being able to collect insights, analyze those insights so I see connections in things that other people don't see because they don't look, or their brain doesn't make the connections that way, which then allows me to put together a strategy of what are we trying to accomplish in a way that other people don't have, which then leads into the tactics. And so I've found out that that's really why my company has been growing so fast. It's not because it helps that we publish this podcast every month and we do these events, but when it really comes down to it, the way that we think about driving revenue and the way that we think about go-to-market strategy is so unique and different, and that's why we're growing so fast. And what I see, and it's actually I've said this a couple of times, but it's taken me a while to fully believe it for myself, but after a couple more calls recently, I do believe this now. And what I believe is that most companies have all of the talent that they need to execute well inside of their company already. The problem is that they have the wrong strategy, especially in marketing. In marketing, there's capable of going to a company, Series D company, 30 marketers on the team. There's plenty of capable people there to do the right things, but they don't know what the right things to do are. Or because of what the strategy is, they are forced or intentionally told to do the wrong things. The things that serve a strategy from 2013. And so that's like the thing that I'm seeing right now. I'm trying to help people see that for themselves, that like you don't need I'm not gonna make a blanket statement, but oftentimes I see you don't need a new VP. You don't need some new digital marketer. You don't need to have another meeting you don't need a CRO. You don't need to have another meeting between sales and marketing. What you need is a new go-to-market strategy. And so I'm going to kind of move down here. The thing that's happening is that companies are stuck in the old way of doing go-to-market. The old way of doing go-to-market, which originated before social networks were around, when the internet was barely at maturity, like Web 1.0, and a lot of these things have changed. And the key of what the strategy is that marketing is responsible for generating some type of signal or contact or something so that sales can try to do sales to people that don't want to buy right now. Back in the day, it was MQLs. Currently, it's still MQLs for a lot of companies, but for some companies now it's moved to MQAs, which is basically the same thing. But now it's just instead of the MQL score being a person, now the MQL score is an account with anonymous contacts, or sometimes with actual contacts that people call AQLs, where that system was built the original system of lead gen was built in a place where the internet wasn't at maturity. Buyers didn't have the information accessible that they needed to make buying decisions. Review sites didn't exist. They didn't have access to their peers to understand what their peers are getting for results or what they're using, and a million other things that have changed. And because those things have changed, it requires a new strategy. But companies get stuck on stuck in the old place because they continuously get their insights from analyst firms and tech vendors instead of customers. That's it. The source of the insights is not the right place, so they run their analysis using the things that the analyst firms and tech vendors tell them to do, which is look at your attribution software that we told you to buy, do these things. So they run their analysis, which leads them to no strategy change differences and just new tactics on top of the same old strategy. And so if you go and read, you can, I have done this recently, you can go and read the, it used to be Serious Decisions, now it's Forrester. So the Forrester 2021 Revenue Waterfall, I'm not sure what page it's on, but you can read the whole thing and you can look, and it's literally built around having marketing generate some type of signal so that sales can do outbound sales to buyers that don't want to buy. It's 2021, completely misaligned with what buyers actually want to do. And so the key here is on the insights. If companies went out like I did in 2017 to their customers and actually started looking for the real insights, and then they analyze them, they would realize that the strategy is misaligned with how buyers want to buy and they need a new go-to-market strategy. And so I want to talk through that. I'm going to go through a story in 2017 about the model that I use today, that our company uses on 50 B2B SaaS companies, on how it originated, and then go through some of the details on that. So one second. I joined this company called Vapotherm in 2000, it might have been early, mid 2016 or 2017. That company had 40 field sales reps and 40 CSMs, give or take, around the country in the field that were trying to sell into hospitals. And for the beginning of my time there, I went out on field rides with the sales reps. And I would go and see what accounts they were doing, what different types of meetings, like a closing meeting, an intro meeting, got to see those things, got to see them visit customers that are evangelist customers versus visiting for a net new account, like a sales call. And I just observed. And the one thing that I really noticed, and I did this with, I had to have gone with at least 50% of the reps over my time there, is that a majority of the first calls that our sales team was doing, and it wasn't a call, it was an actual meeting in person. So these people are driving 3 hours potentially across the state for this meeting, and we get into the meeting and it's super obvious that the person that we're talking to does not want to buy right now. And when you think about that and then you scale that out across 40 sales reps that are all doing the same activity, how fucking inefficient it is, right? How inefficient it is when all of your sales reps for a majority of the meetings are talking to people that are not in a buying cycle at all, that they are doing that to fill in their time because there's nothing that can be better on the calendar to put in. And then when you go and that was one of the insights that I had. And then you map that and you do some pipeline velocity and sales analytics and look at that and what's going on. And you're like, why are our sales cycles so long? Why are our win rates in when we go to these types of meetings so low? And it's like, because we're talking to people that don't want to buy. It shouldn't even be an opportunity at that stage. And so there's like data around here going on. And so the insight that I had that I think that is one of the number one things is that marketing, like, because the sales reps are talking to people that don't want to buy right now, the entire go-to-market is super inefficient. That's how companies went to market in 2011, because sales controlled way more of the journey. There wasn't access to information. There wasn't those things. And so sales had to go in and actually go to talk to people that don't want to buy right now and create demand. But now the shift, because of how buyers have access to all this information, they don't want the sales rep to go and create demand. They want to be able to do their buying process on their own once they've done it, which shifts to, why doesn't marketing do these things? Why don't, and it doesn't necessarily even have to fall into marketing. Why don't we use different approaches in different channels, right? CSMs could do the same thing. Sales reps could do the same thing. Different approaches in different channels to move people forward in the buying cycle so that when our sales team is engaging, people actually want to buy. People want to talk to them. They're asking for the meeting. They're interested. They know all the stuff about the product. And if you're able to shift that, then your sales team gets way more productive. You can think completely differently about how you scale your headcount model. You can think completely differently about what your overall sales process looks like and how much value you can drive through it. You can think differently about all of the other resources that you use in sales and as a company overall. And so there was some big insights and changes that happened there. And so I started to see these things, and then I started to get way more fascinated on how people actually wanted to buy. And so I did some qualitative assessments, talking to customers, doing interviews, things like that. But then I did a quantitative, large-scale market research survey that talked to people, that literally asked our decision makers at 600 plus of our target accounts. There's only 5,000 hospitals in the US. So this is representing 10% of the market of decision makers. And we got that data, and it was like a 12-question survey that looked at the nuances of how people actually buy. When do you want to talk to a sales rep when you are buying a medical technology? Which of these sources do you use in your journey? Which of these sources do you trust the most? What things would you want to accomplish before you talk to a sales rep when buying these things? Where do you use these things to discover new medical technologies or innovations? And when we started to ask those questions, it's crazy. All you got to do is ask and you get all the information. You're like, wow, this is simple. It makes so much more sense now. This is like, it makes sense. Buyers only want to talk to a sales rep when they're interested in buying from you. Buyers use these interesting types of sources for our data, and this is 2017, so you can imagine how it's changed since then. More than 50% of people responded that they use Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and LinkedIn to discover and research medical technology, and that survey was conducted in 2017. So it's way higher now. And so those were some of the insights that allowed us to go out and say, now we're going to distribute this information because people want to learn about products and clinical data and things that are changing in the industry on these channels. So we're going to go out and the strategy is going to be, instead of having our sales team that are not clinicians, that our buyers do not trust as much as other sources, instead of having them try and tell our buyers when they don't want to buy about the clinical data that they may or may not understand fully, about the other customers that are using us and a bunch of different things, instead of using a salesperson to do that, we're going to do that at scale over the internet, leveraging thought leaders, subject matter experts, and other guests and people, and evangelist customers might be a nice way to round it out. So thought leaders, evangelist customers, and what was the last one that I said? I'm not sure, but that's fine. Using those people to distribute the information to our customers instead of having a sales rep do it, so that once the buyer is ready to engage, they already know all those things. So the sales rep doesn't need to convince someone about the clinical data they don't understand. They just need to help our customer buy. Because buying inside of hospitals with procurement and long-term contracts with vendors and things like that is hard. And a lot of people don't know how to do it. And so a big portion of actually selling today is not convincing at all. It's helping a buyer figure out how to buy, who needs to be involved, how do we put together a business case, how do we, at what stage do we need to get legal and procurement involved? Like helping a buyer that wants to buy helping a buyer that wants to buy actually buy is a really interesting kind of I think undervalued skill of a sales rep today. And so we did the buy, right? So the business data qualitatively and quantitatively is this strategy is not that effective. From my perspective, other people in the company thought it was fine. Other people in the company thought it was fine because they didn't have the insights to know what else to do, right? So you'd never actually see these data points if you didn't look. and you'd never know what else to do instead if you didn't look for the insights. And so now I want to move into, and I'll probably weave back and forth into this example, but a framework of I literally just came up with some things to try and help people understand how I do this. Number one is that you need insights. You need customer insights all the time, right? And so right now, my belief is that why companies' go-to-market strategies are not aligned with how buyers want to buy, and they're getting less than satisfactory results in their go-to-market, is because their insights come from technology vendors and analyst firms and companies like that who are invested in telling you a specific story about technology. If you shifted that and you started to get insight from your customers, which is the way that you actually drive strategy, so you need that flow of of insights from customers, qualitative, quantitative, things like that are all around. I talk about opening up like a flow of customer insights within your first 90 days as a marketer or as a marketing leader. It needs to happen. Like, we do podcasts, we do events, we do Q&As, we are active on social. The insights are everywhere right now, and anyone could do it. And so it's not like a lot of the things that we do here. It's nice. We get promotion, we create content, we do those things, but I'm close to saying that the number one most valuable thing is the insights that we get about what all of you are thinking, what questions that you have, how you react to certain things. So if you don't have the insights, the rest of the process gets broken. Bad inputs, right? So now let's go down. After that, it's analysis. So now that you have all the insights, qualitative and quantitative, what are you actually going to make out of it, right? So I talked you through a couple of them. It's like my insights were like, it feels like we're talking to people that don't want to buy right now. And the business data of the sales cycle lengths and the win rates given our ACVs against benchmarks or just common sense are showing that these sales cycles are way longer than they should be, and our win rates are too low. Both of those things put together from an analysis standpoint means that there's probably a better way to get this information to our customers so that when they're in the meeting, they already know these things so that we can focus on getting them to helping them buy. So you can run through different analyses like that based on the insights that get generated, right? So I did this through surveys and qualitative market research. And so you can do that in like a point in time measurement, but over time, the goal is for it to be flowing all the time. Through the analysis, then you get to strategy, which broadly means, what are we trying to accomplish? And so I think that, and once I get into tactics, which will be the next level, you start to see the split and the divide between these two things, which I think most marketers confuse. And so on the strategy side, what are we trying to accomplish? I'm going to go through. If you had the insights that you got from Gartner and Forrester and tech vendors, and then you ran an analysis with attribution software, then it would lead you to no strategy change. And then it would lead you to just doing superficial changes to the tactics on top of the same strategy. So when we think about strategy and we think about what are we actually trying to accomplish, it is we want buyers to be fully educated about our solution so that they come to us ready to buy, because it perfectly aligns with how B2B buyers want to buy. If you ask them, they would tell you that. And so in order, the strategy is align our go-to-market process to how buyers want to buy. When people want a meeting, how do we get them into a meeting? Who do they want to meet with? What do they want in that meeting? What steps do they need to take before they go into the meeting? And so aligning that out with the key change being who is responsible for what parts of the journey, and the main kind of like adjustment that happens there is what is the responsibility of marketing? The big change in all of this of what I'm talking about, and just why I've gravitated toward marketing, is because the big change here is, what does marketing do? And from that, it's just, we need to focus on, instead of collecting contact information or hitting vanity metrics, we need to focus on how are we getting this information out? What story are we trying to tell? how are we telling it to people in a way that they like so that they come to us ready to buy? Some people might think about that and think that that's a simple strategy. Strategy should be simple. It should be like when you see these diagrams of people's, it's so funny, it doesn't happen very much anymore, but back in the day there was companies that were thought that we were some commodity agency, so were comparing us with commodity agencies. And they would send over this like diagram that came from another agency of like, here's the strategy. And it's like this stupidly complicated diagram of where all these things are happening. And I'm like, you got a $5,000 a month budget and someone's proposing that you have all these things. It's not even feasible to do that. And secondarily, this is not a strategy. And so these are all tactics. People confuse tactics with strategy, and people like to obsess over tactics because, again, where you get your insights come from tech vendors and analyst firms that push products that help you with the tactics. And so when we move through at the tactical level, what are we actually going to do from the strategy, which is we need to educate buyers on we sell a complex, differentiated, disruptive product that people are initially resistant to because they feel comfortable with something they've been doing for 40 years. They learned about it in college. They've been practicing it on patients for as long as they've been there. They are accustomed to using it that way, and we have something that can do it in a better way, but it's a major change to what they're doing, which would be reflective of a lot of the people on the Zoom and a lot of people listening to the podcast are in the same boat. If you sell SaaS, you're disrupting an old process. And we're not being successful in having our sales team try and teach them. So we need to have marketing teach them all these things. So, because if they know these 5 or 7 or 10 things, then they'd be way more likely to consider purchasing our product. And so even if you distill down even further, the strategy component is that I need our buyers to know these 10 things before they go into a sales meeting. Or I need our buyers to know these 10 things. And once they know these 10 things, they're going to be more likely to ask for a sales meeting. And then at the tactical level, it's how do we do that? How do we actually get the message across? Which then led us to, like, it was me as a marketer, right? I'm not going to be the person creating this podcast or video telling emergency medicine physicians about the clinical trial that we did. They're not going to believe me, right? So it led us to create a podcast where I interviewed people that actually did the clinical trials. And then instead of our sales team, our sales rep, who a year ago was selling copiers and now is selling medical technology, instead of them trying to communicate this clinical trial to a person that's not interested in buying, so therefore resistant to the information, we're going to have this 30-minute interview with somebody that actually did the clinical trial that their peers trust, that they would watch at conferences, that are talking about the study that they did and the conclusions. And through that, we did 37 episodes of a podcast, and it was a very successful content pillar that was distributed through micro content in Facebook ads at that time, email, and was also put on YouTube. The next insight and component was that through both the survey that we did and through the qualitative insights that I got through being on site with our customers in hospitals, in ICUs, is that these people use social networks a lot. And a lot of them even admit that they use it to learn about new medical technology. So how do we put content in there so that when they're browsing and they're looking at at medical technology, maybe at a workout, maybe at some food blog, that we show up there, and if we put it in the right format and we put it in a way that they like, then they would consume that and learn. And then initially, because we didn't have a lot of organic reach or a lot of presence, we used media to distribute the information, it's crazy. That's how our paid social strategy came about. 2017, I was like, I need my buyers to know all these things. We don't have any organic reach, but what if we just take these videos and these case studies and these clinical trials and these product announcements and all these things, and we just pay to so that everyone sees them? Be awesome. And we still do that today, and it works incredibly well because it's 2 or 3 steps ahead of what current companies do from a go-to-market standpoint. So then we had this kind of like paid motion going. And as we started to get the wheels turning on this, it didn't take more than probably, the initial results from the paid experiment that I ran, if you look at results as actual like website conversions, felt it within 24 hours. Before we were doing this stuff, our website would get almost no conversions. No one was asking for a demo. Start running ads, people start asking for demos. Who would have thought? And that was how I figured out that attribution might be flawed. Might be some things going on here that's not getting measured. So we started to get initial traction and results there, which I needed to then track through to close one on an our current sales cycle at that time was 182 days blended. And so I had to track that through the sales process, but wait, all these deals started closing in somewhere between 40 and 75 days, which then created another insight for the strategy that we still use today and how it's been evolved on, but the core of the strategy is the same, which is that when buyers come to you and say, hey, I'd like to talk to your sales rep about buying this stuff, it signals that they're way further down the process of buying. And if they're way further down the process of buying, then you will have shorter sales cycles and higher win rates, because marketing has already done a lot of this job of the education that the sales team won't need to do anymore, which creates a more likelihood of actual success. And then as we started to scale it up more, and I started to compare the scalability and the effectiveness, just black and white. We had sales sourced, we had SDRs calling in to get meetings, and we had people that were coming to our website saying, hey, I want to buy right now. All the other trash I'd already thrown out, ebooks, direct response, that stuff wasn't converting. So we literally just had basically 3 sources of pipeline and revenue. And if you actually compared those 3 different sources, and we're going to put together aggregate data across a lot of different companies to show this effect, because it makes sense logically, and the data supports it because it's true, is that people that come inbound that want to buy will have shorter sales cycles and higher win rates. Then definitely better than cold outbound, and usually better than sales sourced as well. But sometimes the data is iffy on sales sourced because it gets cherry picked. And so I'm going to kind of like round this part out here, but I want to put a bow on it. The process is insights, analytics, strategy, tactics. If you don't have and the real part of it is getting the insights, but the insights and analytics is hard. It's a skill. It's a massively undervalued skill in B2B companies right now. But don't be confused. It's the most important skill. If you line that up to develop a strong strategy, the tactics are easy. It's simple. The reason that companies struggle with go-to-market is because they don't have alignment on those two or three things. The 2 things, insights and analytics, which drives misalignment at the strategy, which creates bad tactics that don't convert, and misalignments when you actually start putting it into production between departments and teams. And so what I've found, and I think what companies should consider, I've seen some companies do it, but I don't, across the board, don't see a lot of companies considering this, is having one person own strategy. You're going to get inputs from other people. You're going to get some of those things, but having one person own strategy who's a strategist. I see a lot of companies have a CRO that owns strategy, but that person is a sales leader. And like, I'm self-aware enough to know that in a CRO role, like, that's not for me. I can do all those things, but there are people that can do it better. But I do recognize, and I have, as I dive through it, that strategy is the missing component, and a lot of companies should consider, for alignment purposes, that having one person own strategy could actually be a beneficial move. And then somebody asked me on a podcast recently, they said, what about your strategy is changing in 2022. And I went back to them and told them the actual part of our strategy that I run doesn't change on a yearly basis. The tactics change. The tactics change a lot. How we're actually going to do the podcast, whether we're going to do video or text, whether it's going to go, how frequently we're going to put it on YouTube, what we're going to talk about, right? So some of those things will change frequently, but at the top level of strategy, I'm trying to educate buyers using content on the internet so that they are ready, so that they are more educated, which creates word of mouth in the market between peers, which then facilitates word of mouth and then inbound demand. And that simple strategy has not changed for me in 5 years. Because the times where major strategy shifts happen are when there are major shifts. Because the reason that strategy hasn't changed in B2B companies recently is because for about 40 years, there were not major shifts in B2B marketing. From 1970 to 2010, there were not a lot of major shifts that happened. The marketing mix was simple. Marketing's job, sales enablement, go build trade show booths, put together print collateral, make sure that the analyst firms and other, at that time, influencers thought well about us. That's your marketing. That's the tactics of your marketing strategy. And then this big shift happened, which was not just the internet, but how the internet connected information and peers together. And so the real, you kind of see that coming out in SEO, right? People remember reading Rand Fishkin's blogs and things like that. But it's happening at scale now when it moved from blogs to social networks because the consumption has changed. I don't need to discover a website and go to that blog. I get 10 pieces of content from 10 different people in one place. And that big shift, not only social networks, but the availability of information, communities that are being created, just the hyper connection of people that do the same job that know each other, right? So all of those different things in place have created a different environment that requires a different strategy. And I do believe that, and I said it at the beginning, I'll say it again, I think that most companies have all the talent that they need, super talented people in all these companies to actually succeed. And I think that the strategy that they put in place from a go-to-market standpoint is why they're not being as successful as they want. And I am pumped. Let's get into some questions.
I think it'd be awesome if you could talk a bit about change management, specifically how you influence and manage strategy change that starts with marketing, filtering up to leadership and the rest of the org, especially sales.
Yeah, so when I did this at a company, I'm going to be totally honest with you, it was really hard. Trying to influence major go-to-market changes, which move millions of dollars of budget in one place to another, and not only the budget standpoint, but the mindset, right? Wrapping your head around the idea that, we don't need our sales team to just go and drive 3 hours to have a meeting that we know is going to win at less than 1%. So why are we even doing it? Shifting your mindset around that to say meetings might not be the metric. So there was major adjustments that you need to make from a mindset, then metrics, then, you know what I mean? And it cascades down. For me, the way that I was able to get this to move was, one, to run it in a pilot where it was small. And so I was able to get a small amount of funds to get marketing automation so that we could do some level of tracking, the budget to redo our website, the budget for initial content and media. And then I was able to run that, and then I literally ran it, had no more budget, and had to wait 3 months for some of the several leads that we captured to actually close. So I literally was like, it could have been going faster, could have been making way more progress, but couldn't because we had no more budget and needed to show some type of ROI. And then 2 or 3 of them closed in a much faster way. And then people start to see, this can work. This is driving, we're getting revenue from this in a new way. And so we started to get initial buy-in to the idea of using marketing this way. But it at this point was not influencing go-to-market, right? So this is just executives seeing that if we'll keep doing what we're doing, and then marketing will deliver a couple of deals that we're going to close, and that'll be great. So let's just fund marketing to do that. And that was pretty much where I got stuck at this company, right? I scaled that up to where marketing was delivering $1 million in revenue, but the go-to-market wasn't influenced to change at the level that I would have thought was deserving of that performance at all. They still continued to scale the sales team. They still continued to scale the SDR team. When we already had too many, and it was clear that customer success and marketing were the places that should be getting more investment. And so the change management is, not going to lie to you, super hard. And I've said this multiple times. I think that people that try to do it inside of companies from a manager or director level are setting themselves up for a lot of frustration, slowing down their career, potentially missing windows of opportunity to actually get something done because it takes too long to get the change implemented. And so so change that is going to happen at that level must come top down, CEO down. And so you can figure out how to try and influence that person. I had a decent job influencing the CRO, or who was actually, the title was head of sales at that point, to get some of the changes to happen, right? Like our sales team following up, the right Salesforce, dashboards and reporting. I was able to get some things done, but not at a level to impact the organization in the way that it really could have. And so when you have that, and it's up to when you have that situation, there's a lot of value in trying to get that done. There's a ton of experience that you gain, not only in marketing, but in business change management, communication, business politics, a lot of that stuff. But I'm pretty sure that if that's the case and you're not getting initial traction, then you should go and look for a place that you're not going to get friction there, that already does the things that you want to do. That's just been my experience. I learned a lot, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity there. It changed my career, but I would never do it again. It was very frustrating and very slow. And the impact that I would have made if there were not as many roadblocks and discussions and things like that and questions, then I would have made way more progress and made way more of an impact for the company.
Awesome. That was a great answer. Let's get John on here. He asked a question earlier.
Hey, Chris. Thanks, Angelica. Chris, one of the questions I had for you was, when you think about interviewing customers and really trying to understand how they buy, we find that in the B2B SaaS space, you're often going through system integrators, resellers, consultants. Often these decisions involve tons of different stakeholders, sometimes with very different opinions on how to buy and what that process should look like. The analogy I make all the time with people is, it's like, I feel like we're selling chocolate chips and we're going after people who want to buy cookies. How do we partner with the butter and the flour and the eggs to make sure that we're going after the right thing? And it seems, just interested in your feedback on how do you manage all those different pathways to your end result?
So I don't have all of the context, so kind of get me back on track if I'm off here, but I've worked at companies that sell through integrators and OEMs and things like that. And the mistake that I made back then is thinking that the OEM and the integrator were my customer. The end user is the customer. And so the integrator gives you, in my experience, bad information about what the customer actually needs. So it's identifying who is the real customer, and then kind of and then going straight to the source to get the information, not secondary market research through a reseller or a distributor. The second piece of that is that at this point, like, I get that some companies have some level of rationale to be going through a distributor to the customer. But look around. We're in a direct-to-consumer type of world. Unless you sell like even if you sell like a screw that needs to go into a lamp to create the lamp, like, you could still sell the screw direct to consumer if you wanted to. And so I've been pushing, because I worked at a lot of companies that we sold through resellers, gave them 40 points to do nothing, and we still had to create all the demand. And when I started to go direct to the customer, what I found is that if we adjusted our product roadmap, then we could create a solution that could be sold direct to the customer. We can cut this integrator out, and we can build a completely different business. And so those are like some interesting strategy insights that you get when you go direct to the end user. But I didn't get your full question, how all the context. Would love to hear what you think and what your reaction is.
No, I think you did answer the question pretty accurately, which is, again, we do give away a lot to people who don't do anything. We often get held back in terms of access to the customer. You get a lot of filtered information from the people that you're trying to work through. And I do think that, even if their phones are ringing to try to buy our solution, that's where, from what you were saying, really where the value focus is.
Totally. And then another note is that back in the day, the like qualitative customer interviews were definitely what I did. And I got so much better at them from when I started at the beginning in 2013 to at that period of like 2017, 2018. And I still do them today, but they're nowhere near as heavy in my strategy as I do anymore, because like I'm kind of doing customer research with you right now. You know what I mean? I'm kind of, when I respond to a comment on LinkedIn, I'm kind of doing, and I ask them a question, they give me a response, I'm kind of doing customer research right then. When I say something and then I see how the 4 or 5 people that I can see here, how they react, or some people nodding their heads or people dozing off, like I get insights in qualitative ways all the time. So I don't need to set up a structured interview with 10 people to ask them a set of 10 questions, because I'm getting that in other ways. That's kind of like a level, the next level where like you don't need the structure anymore. But at the beginning, the interview framework structure is great, and I think that you should do that direct to the customer. The alternative that you can think about that might be easier for you to pull off is running a survey over the top. So then you don't have to deal with trying to get an intro from the reseller to the customer. You can just go into, we do Zoom info, bought Qualtrics, had the surveys coming from a third party, and ran surveys directly over the top to our customer, got the data and insights, and then adjusted the strategy.
Perfect. Thank you, Chris.
Cool.
Ian had a follow-up to that. What about market research services to extract these insights to enterprisey?
Could you say that one more time?
What about market research services to extract these insights? Is that too enterprisey?
It's not too enterprisey. It'll give you a nice slice, but as you kind of heard through what I said at the beginning, and maybe it's great that you asked the question because I'll say it more explicitly now. The qualitative insights that you get by spending time with customers, going to their place of business, doing the podcast, creating the content, interviewing thought leaders, things like that, give you the insights of what should be in the survey. And so because I started to see there's qualitatively in the field, there's misalignments in the buying process. Buyers aren't ready. It triggered me to have a survey about how buyers want to buy, not a different type of survey. And so my feeling is that the qualitative insights should feed and fuel what you want to do quantitatively, because you see qualitative insights way faster. if you went out, and I've done it happens every time you go out and talk to 10 people that are like at the same type of size company with the same job title, whatever, you segment however you want, but similar types of people, and you have something that you want to learn, you ask them, you'll see patterns of the same thing. You ask 6 people, you'll hear the same type of thing, and you can start to apply, okay, most people that fit this mold believe this thing. And then from there, once you kind of have a sense of what do these people believe or what's the landscape, then I'd recommend using more of a large-scale market research, whether it's a firm. You don't need to use a firm. Like running a survey, you can have a little bit of tech, a contact database, and you can do it yourself. But companies could use a firm if they wanted to too. I recognize that most companies don't think about doing this and don't have the technology to support it. So most, if they wanted to, would use a firm. And I think that like if you know what questions you want to ask, it would be a good investment to use that for specific purposes, whether that's to get executives on board with how the world actually works, to get more scale of data that you have seen quantitatively to verify that before you make a major strategy change. There's a lot of use cases for why you would use large-scale quant afterwards.
Great. Okay, let's get Duke on here to ask his question.
Thanks, Angelica. Hey, Chris.
Hey, Duke. Good to have you here.
Thanks, man. My question for you is, do modern salespeople need to be above average marketers in addition to good or really great salespeople, or should they really let their partners in marketing handle that?
There's no black and white answer here. I think that at the moment, what's happening is that sales reps are recognizing that they need to start being better marketers because the marketers aren't doing it well. So you see this movement of sales reps starting to bleed into marketing because their marketing counterparts aren't getting it done because they have the wrong strategy. We can just go full circle there. So it's happening. It'll happen naturally because smart people see the changes. They get the insights. They see where people are paying attention, and they change their strategy. So smart people, smart sales professionals have gone from like, I'm going to bang the phones for 100 calls to I'm going to do a podcast and put content on LinkedIn and make connections with my buyers so that when I do make the 3 or 4 outbound touches a day, I'm doing it with a ton of context, that people know my name, that they know my company, that they have some level of trust or credibility with me. And so you see smart people making those adjustments already. I don't think that there's a black and white answer here, but I do think that there's a lot of merit in adjusting your sales activity strategy once you've fixed marketing. And so, like I mentioned, the marketing change is the biggest part that needs to shift and go to market. Until that changes, a lot of the other stuff can't happen. So fixing marketing would then would create space and relieve pressure on sales so that sales in the short term wouldn't need to hit meeting metrics or wouldn't need to hit such a high whatever activity metric, which would allow them the 2 or 3 months to start experimenting with producing content, more strategic outbound, putting together some other type of event where not every single touch needs to be, can we have a meeting? Can we have a meeting? Can we have a meeting? So I think that companies should think about that. But I think the order is clear. I think that salespeople will move in that direction because marketing is not delivering, but the real solution would be to have marketing deliver and then have sales be able to be more strategic about the activities.
That's perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we have the other John in the room coming on now to ask his question.
I'm not the other John. I'm the first John.
You're the original.
Yeah, the original John.
So, Santa Chris, I have a question. And by the way, I really enjoyed that.
I'm glad.
So I'm generalizing a lot here, but if you sort of take this ideal state you're talking about, a company that's really kind of doing things right, and compare that to the volume of companies that are not doing it right, yeah, it seems to me it's like 90% bad, 10% good. You know, that's just a gross estimate, just based on companies I talk to. What are your thoughts about that? How far along are we in the evolution, and what do you think it's going to take? You know, like we went from non-cloud to cloud. and it took 10, 15 years to do that. Do you think it's kind of the same leap, or what are your thoughts there?
Depends how you define good and how you define bad, right? If good means that you shoot as many 3-pointers as Steph Curry, there's not a lot of good people out there.
How about companies that are above a C plus? Let's put it that way.
It's still tough to define, but I'll go with it. So like, the results of these of not doing these things at the moment is not destroying companies. Get it? So like in these companies, things are getting harder, things are getting more expensive, things are getting less efficient, but it's not putting them out of business. They're still growing at 40, 30, 40, 50% high growth companies, right? In that type of like, I don't know, 10 to 500 million range. Maybe at the upper end, the growth starts to slow pretty dramatically, but the growth is still happening, but there are signals that it's not working as well. And the signals are obvious. A lot of people recognize them, but because of where they get their insights, they don't know that they should change, and they don't know what to change to. And so I think that I don't think that it's right to say like some people are doing it bad and some people are doing it good, because people that aren't doing this are still getting objectively good results. I think that the people that aren't doing this, though, could be getting significantly better results if they did something different. And so this is more about the incremental additional lift, right? It's why our company this year grew 520, some type of percentage of that, instead of like 200%. Those are the differences.
Climate change, right? I mean, it's kind of that kind of progression.
What do you mean?
Well, it's going to take a while, and people are still going to think they're happy.
Yes, totally. Look at you can look at anything that's happened in B2B and watch the slow adoption of things, right? So go back to SEO. Whenever, I don't know, when people were buying Google search ads in 2000, 2001, people were doing SEO in 2001. B2B companies didn't start thinking about that until the early 2010s, potentially later than that, right? So there's like a 10-year delay. Podcasting is a similar thing. Social media is a similar thing, right? When I was telling a B2B company that we should run Facebook and Instagram ads because our customers are telling us that they learn about medical technology there, and I watched them in the break room using it, and they still thought that I was crazy. And it was so obvious. Like this is the inertia of what's happening, because at the executive level, they're not getting these insights, and where they're getting the insights are from somewhere I think that is biased and flawed. So we are going to have, and there's no source that's giving people on the ground information, which is what we're trying to build right now. We work with 50 companies. We align directly against revenue. We see clearly what's working and what's not. We build IP rapidly because we do it for 50 companies at once instead of one company at once. And then we help people see patterns and trends that we see across a lot of companies that they can see in their own data. So this is a gap that we're trying to fill. There's a clear gap in the market, and we're going to try and fill it.
Awesome. Thanks.
Thanks, John. Great to have you here.
Well, okay. Do you want one more question? I'm not sure we have time. What do you think?
We'll close out here.
Okay. Sounds good.
So I want to let everyone know that I love doing these things, because I came into this talk not really knowing what I was going to talk about, and you all come here and attend, which allow me to have my thoughts. It puts me in a position where the thoughts need to come out. I'm not going to sit here and not say anything, right? And so I get a better product and a better result because you all are here. So I'm thankful for that, and thank you for attending. The questions are amazing too. I want to leave people with a couple of tips, just based on what I see broadly in the market. The insights one is huge, right? Like anyone can go out and do this and collect better insights for their company On the analysis piece of it, right? If you can do both insights and analysis, that's great, but you should be self-aware because there's a skill level and some types of way people's brains works of whether or not people can really do those things. And so think through whether you could do those too, but those are the clear inputs to strategy are insights and analysis, which then would lead you to, I think, potentially a different strategy. And then the last tip that I want to leave with people with is that strategy should be simple. The tactics should be potentially complex. Even our tactics are pretty simple. And so with that, I appreciate all of you. We do these things twice a month. So the next one will not just be me, but we'll do it on January 6th. And we'll have Gaetano Donardi joining, and we're going to talk through 2021 recap, 2022 predictions. That'll be Thursday, January 6th at 12 p.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. UK. Appreciate having you all here, and I can't wait to see you again. And if I don't, have a happy holiday season, and we'll see you next year. Bye, everyone.